I want to talk about LSU's offensive line. It stands to reason I would do that because we spent all of August talking about LSU's offensive line. And all the discussion was, how's that group going to handle Clemson in the first game? TJ Parker. How are they going to block this guy? 11 sacks. Top 10 pick. Like, how are you going to handle that guy? Look at what they brought back in the middle of that defensive front. Like, it's dudes. How is a completely new unit going to handle that? And I wouldn't suggest LSU dominated at the line of scrimmage. I think that would be a little bit bold. But they held their own. 1 sack, 2 pressures. Nussmeier had some time to operate. I thought the offensive line acquitted itself nicely. Now, Pro Football Focus knows a little bit more about this than me, and they're certainly going to put an objective grade on everybody. And I was interested to see kind of what that looked like now that the dust has settled. Now, Braylon Moore got SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week, and his grade reflected that, especially in pass protection. He graded an 85.8 in pass blocking. Again, I feel like with the new season, I need to kind of be specific here. An 85.8 is an exceptional grade. If you grade out in the 70s, that's a good day of work, no matter what you're doing. 80s is elite. You never see grades in the 90s. It rarely happens. So an 85.8 is an exceptional mark as far as pass protection goes. He was in pass protection 43 snaps, did not allow a sack, did not allow a pressure, did not allow a hurry, did not have a penalty. He was great as your anchor in the middle, and that's a huge deal for LSU. For LSU's offense to be good, Braylon Moore is going to have a great year, and he had a great first game in pass protection. Josh Thompson and Paul Mbenga next to him at guard in pass protection, exceptional. 84 for Thompson, 81 for Mbenga. That is great stuff from those guys. That is the middle of your offensive line. That is your offensive line interior getting the job done. If your tackles get beat from time to time, 1, that pressure takes longer to get to you off the edge than it does right up the gut. And 2, Garrett Nussmeier can see that coming and make an adjustment to it. Nussmeier is not the fastest dude on the field, but he does have great pocket awareness and the ability to get rid of the football far more often than not. That's why he did not take, it's part of the reason he did not take many sacks last year. He had a great offensive line at pass blocking in front of him, but he also gets rid of the ball very, very quickly. Brian Kelly talked about it today. His average release time was about 2.5 seconds on Saturday night. That's great stuff. There was a statistic that ESPN's Advanced Analytics did last year. This was sometime in late October, I remember doing the show, where Garrett Nussmeier was the second fastest release in the Southeastern Conference. Like, he gets the ball out very, very quickly. He can see when some pressure is coming. What you cannot avoid, what you cannot deal with, what you cannot play through is pressure coming up the gut. If you get beat at center and guard in pass rush consistently, you cannot operate an offense. And LSU's 3 guys in the middle all graded over an 80 in pass protection. That is excellent, excellent work. Now, you look at the tackles, and they didn't have as good a day according to PFF. Tyree Adams at left tackle, 66.4, and then Weston Davis at right tackle, 58.6. Weston Davis was credited with 3 hurries allowed in the game. So it was not a great day for the tackles, but again, as I mentioned, you got to get better at that, clearly, and I think Tyree Adams and Weston Davis, who were starting their first season opener as a tackle, Weston Davis making his first start as a Tiger, like, that is a tough assignment, and they'll get better. But when those guys falter, Nussmeier can adjust to that. There's just not a lot of adjusting you can do when a nose or a linebacker comes up the A-gap and right in your lap. So, to me, their ability in pass rush and their performance in pass rush was excellent in the game on Saturday. Now, on the run blocking side of things, the grades were not as pretty, and that's to be expected. Braylon Moore led the way here with a 67.8. Then you had Josh Thompson with a 53.1, Mbenga 46. Then you had Tyree Adams 60.4 and Weston Davis 48.1. All of those grades are pretty pedestrian to poor with Weston Davis. And look, it's a tough ask. That's a talented defensive front. But even with those grades, LSU still stuck with the run, ran it 31 times, and found some success. What you have in Caden Durham is a back who is capable of making the first guy miss. You saw that on the first snap of the game on Saturday when LSU handed him the ball. Clemson got pressure up the middle. He broke the tackle, put his hand on the ground, bounced to the outside, and ran for about 25 yards. You've got a guy that is capable of that. In the game against South Carolina where he kind of won the job last year, he forced 7 missed tackles, which is a huge number. So you've got a guy that even when you get beat on the offensive line can sometimes make something out of nothing. These guys have to improve. They've got to be better in the ground game. But what LSU can do is help them. Help them by staying committed to the run. Help them by being creative in the run game. You saw that with Xavier Thomas coming back there and motioning into the backfield and taking a handoff. You're going to see some of that with Juwan Johnson. And you saw Nussmeier being a little bit creative in the way that he wasn't last year. I use creative kind of loosely here. But he was able to pull the ball and run off right tackle and go get 10 yards for you. And you ran for over 100 yards. So, again, you got to get better. And they'll face weaker defensive fronts than they saw on Saturday. But the offensive line, to me, gets a passing grade. Not to jump back into the Dabo segment from there, but gets a passing grade in this game. Now, you talked about the rotation that Brian Kelly kind of suggested you might see. Braylon Moore played all 75 snaps. Josh Thompson played all 75 snaps. Mbenga only played 63. You saw Cohen Eccles come in there for 12. He played the other 12. Tyree Adams played 71. He came out when he got hurt, and they moved Chester in at left tackle. And then you saw Weston Davis play all 75. So really the only substitution you saw was Cohen Eccles a little bit at left guard. You did not see Chester in unless there was an injury. You did not see the true freshman Carius Kern come in and play either. So a lot was made last week about, they're going to rotate 7 guys. They're going to rotate 8 guys. They don't really have a set offensive line. You didn't really see that. You saw a little bit at left guard. Mbenga came out. Eccles came in. But for 63 of the 75 snaps, you saw the same 5 offensive line. There's one injury, brief timeout, and I will suggest this from that injury substitution that we saw with DJ Chester. Tyree Adams needs to stay healthy. That's something that needs to happen. I did a segment, wrote a story on LouisianaSports.net, most indispensable guys on the roster, and I went through 5 names. I would add Tyree Adams to that list now because that's not a guy you want coming out if you're going to put DJ Chester at left tackle. DJ Chester was a center last year. He's worked at left guard. I've never even seen him work a tackle, and he was the first offensive tackle brought in. It was not Carius Kern. It was not Ori Williams. It was DJ Chester. That's not what you want at left tackle. Chester is fine as a swing guy on the inside, not left tackle. So that's something to keep an eye on as the season moves forward. LSU needs Tyree Adams to stay healthy. I thought that the offensive line did a good job. You get a week this week where you're dealing with an outmanned opponent, and we'll see what they can do against a talented Florida team, but not as talented as Clemson. And if those guys continue to build, this is something I've harped on all of August, and I'm not moving off this at all. If LSU's offensive line plays well this year, they're going to be hard to beat. Not unbeatable. Not natty favorites, I would suggest. But they're going to be hard to beat if that offensive line plays well. And I thought they were on the right track on Saturday. Wasn't dominant. They held their own. The grades reflect that. The scoreboard reflected that. The flow of the game reflected that. I think kudos to all involved with the LSU offensive line. It was the biggest question we had all August entering that game, and they passed the test. Good on them on Saturday night.
Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.